What's up, people? This is the Believe in Saints podcast presented by FanDuel. I am Mario Jerez, Spanish play-by-play voice of the Saints, native New Orleanian. She is my co-host, Erin Summers, seasoned reporter and analyst covering the Saints and the NFL. And today we are very excited for our next guest. She is a veteran reporter for the NFL Network, a part-time host on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas, and a proud alum of the University of Texas. She is Jane Slater. Jane, what's up? Thanks so much for the time today. How are you?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me on.
Very much looking forward to the conversation. We will talk some Saints. We know you were at training camp. You were also at Texans training camp recently. We know that you have a very wide knowledge of the league. And that's kind of where I want to start the conversation. You know, we'll obviously talk Saints throughout the interview, Tyler Shough, Kellen Moore, expectations for this season. But as far as the NFL as a whole, there's a lot of good storylines. Whether you talk
Yeah.
about Aaron Rodgers last season, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson still feeling the pressure. Now both have new head coaches. There's just a lot to break down and look forward to. So, what are you looking forward to the most in the NFL in 2026?
It's interesting, and maybe this is just the fact that it's closest in proximity to my mind and where I just was, which is the Houston Texans. I mean, here you have a championship level defense, and you had nine different guys, multi-site games, 62 and a half sacks as a team, and then you bring in Jadavian Clowney. Okay, so defense is settled, right? But on the offensive side of the ball, it's CJ Stroud that so many are concerned about. And after talking to him yesterday, guys, a lot of people make these too early preseason predictions, and you have to see where the roster is, health, et cetera. But I was more concerned about the mental as it related to CJ because I was up at that Patriots game. It was the four interceptions, the pick six, and it just I felt for him because at some point I had to wonder, well, publicly this defense has said that they support him. The coach says they love him. How much does it frustrate you to have a defensive season like that? And then to have it be the quarterback play in the postseason. And then do you look to your coach and go, should we have pulled him at the half? They thought he'd come back after the half and get it together, and he looked a little bit better. But we thought he was seeing ghosts. Well, he cut his hair, guys, and he came to camp. And when I talked to him off camera, he said something that I thought was interesting. He said, everybody the analyst out there, but he said this Nick Caley offense, which was year one last year with the Texans, he was like, there was a lot to it. And I'm sitting there with Kurt Warner, who is a Hall of Fame quarterback, as we're having this conversation. And I think as fans, analysts, reporters, we don't see all the little things that come with it. Not to mention his offensive line. I mean, he was sacked 53 times the year before, 25 last year. So he's on the ground a lot. And their run game was only averaging 3.9 uh, yards a run. And so they went out, they got David Montgomery, and Woody Marks started coming along. And I asked him, I said, do you have a mental health coach? Because in Dallas, Dak Prescott has one. He says, no, it's my pastor, but he finds himself in the scripture. Uh, a lot of people hate when he says things like this, or players in general say this, but he's like, this isn't everything. I love football and I'm good at football. I've been good at football since I was a kid. But at the end of the day, this isn't the end all be all. And that will drive fans crazy to hear that. But to me, it says mentally, you kind of hope that he's able to pack the bag and move on from last season. And that's what I walked away from. And then given all those pieces around him on offense and what that defense is, I think the Houston Texans are a sneaky team to keep an eye on.
It's always interesting when you hear players speak like that, but in everyday life, you have to have something to keep you grounded. You can't rely on one thing to hang your emotions off of. So I completely understand that. But why does every player cut their hair when they go through something? It's
Well,
so funny.
think about it, Aaron. I mean, girls, we do this too when we go through a bad breakup. It's like new hair, who dis? And so I think on some levels, maybe the haircut has helped him. Although he said that the dreads are a fairly new thing. He said that it was actually cooler for him in Houston to have the dreads as opposed to not because the sun's getting to his head. And I
Mm,
guess the dreads kept it away. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way.
yeah, I didn't
But yeah,
either.
but I think sort of metaphorically, it's his way of saying he wants to head into the season and do something different. He wants to feel a little bit lighter. And, he felt very composed yesterday. He just talked about all the things that he's been working on, like some of the red zone stuff, the, decision making in the pocket. And so, I think he's going to be just fine. But a lot of
Mhm.
people look at him walking or talking, and everyone's got an opinion. He was like, he was telling Kurt Warner, we're in the age of social media, and a lot of people will say they don't look at it and they don't care, but it does eventually get to you.
Absolutely. Right now, we're kicking off the preseason with the Hall of Fame game, Panthers Cardinals Thursday night. What do you glean from preseason games, and how much do you value the way that they've changed the cuts now too? Because they are not cutting until the last game of the season, so the snaps and the amount of time people are playing varies. I know the Saints have a couple joint practices coming up, so I always think that that is where you can get more out of there.
Good job, Erin. Yes, I agree with that. Uh, these guys, especially when you get into camp, they haven't hit other players. That's when it
Mhm.
gets physical. We've seen fights when I've done Cowboys camp, and seeing Kellen Moore come back and have the Saints and the Cowboys scrimmage, I think is going to be really fun to watch. I mean, Kellen had a lot to do with the development of Dak Prescott. So did Doug Nussmeier and Scott Tolzien. But yeah, I mean, the preseason games, you don't see much. I mean, it's really an opportunity for the guys that are on the bubble to make an impression, and you've got to be careful. I mean, going back to Kellen Moore, when I was there on the second, I said, I don't know why I thought this, Kellen, but I was thinking back to when you got injured at training camp with the Cowboys. And it was the day I was in New Orleans. I was like, this is your 10-year anniversary. But it changed the trajectory of his career. And right after that, Tony Romo went down and then had the back situation. And then it was obviously Dak Prescott who became the heir apparent. And so I think you really have to balance in training camp and the preseason games how much you play these guys because you really do want to protect it for the season. But what's the balance there? You want to be aggressive, you want to get the reps in, but at the same time, you've got a long season ahead of you. And I don't know what the numbers say on that. Like there are some teams who subscribe to playing their starters a lot in the preseason. And then, with other teams, you won't see your guys. I mean, we've seen that in Dallas, but I just wonder if sometimes it takes them a while to knock off the rust. But I mean, if you're watching a preseason game, hoping to glean how Alvin Kamara looks or Tyler Shough, this to me, I think is just such a small snapshot of what you're going to see. And not only that, if you think Kellen Moore is going to show you his plays in the preseason, you're crazy. Like it is a very watered down, sterilized version of what all these offenses are going to look like.
Well said. Tough to disagree, but all of that being said, I still look forward to the preseason, if anything, just because we're closer to the actual games and the actual football, right? And we'll look ahead, but I want to look back for a second and talk about the Saints offseason. I know you really like the acquisition of David Edwards. We've talked about that a lot, but what would you say the Saints did to improve their team this offseason? And do you like the moves?
Travis Etienne. I mean, that to me, when Alvin Kamara, I thought was his best, and if you and to keep him fresh, you want to have a fresh set of wheels there. And I love that when I was talking to Kellen Moore, he talked about what he likes about these two guys is they're both every down backs, and so they're interchangeable depending on the flow of the game. And
Mhm.
so just because one guy comes out, or God forbid one gets injured, you've got another guy that you don't have to cater the offense to. The offense is the offense. And so it helps you in no huddle situations and things along those lines. And so I think Travis Achan was a really strong move for them this offseason.
I think so too. Alvin Kamara alluded to the fact that he likes having that 1-2 punch because it's not all on his shoulders. I think that they really invested in the run game this offseason. I'm excited to see what that does for this team going forward. How much difference can a quarterback actually be, or how much different can he be in year one to year two, especially with building that relationship with a head coach, Kellen Moore?
Oh, it's huge. And they thought really highly of Tyler Shuck, and we had heard those rumors about it prior to the draft. And I remember Shador Sanders being there and going, would they? But knowing Kellen, I didn't know. I mean, Kellen, I think you guys have seen this. He's not a flashy guy. He played at a high level, came to Dallas. I mean, we really never got a glimpse of Kellen's personality really until even he got into the coaching. I mean, look at Kellen in year two of coaching, how different he is and how much more comfortable he is. Tyler, when I sat down with him, was such a confident kid. Uh, he felt like he had a really good command of this playbook, and then to to have the wherewithal to call the offense in your second year and say, I'm paying for all your flights, I'm paying for all your meals, and we're gonna go and hang out with Drew Brees, which was Travis Etienne's, idol growing up. So much so that he named his son last year Saint. The kid's only 1 years old. Talk about weird foreshadowing, right? Um, but yeah, I think when you talk to Tyler Shough, he seems more comfortable with the offense. And when you come in, he was battling for the position with Spencer Rattler, and coming into camp as the bona fide starter, I think does something for you differently. There is an ownership to the offense, but it seemed like, he got a lot of work in with the guys in the offseason. And if I know Nuss and Tolzien and Kellen, they really worked with him and got him up to speed. And there's a reason why those guys have been together almost a decade, that quarterback trio, as they've moved like Eagles, Chargers, Cowboys, is because they're really, really good at developing some of these guys. I mean, look at Jalen Hurts here with this group winning the Super Bowl when Kellen was there.
Exactly. Well said. And with Tyler Shough, the fan base is really excited, even though he hasn't even started a full NFL season yet. And as you know, it's kind of been a revolving door of quarterbacks here since Drew Brees' retirement, going into the Hall of Fame this weekend. Shout out. We were just talking about CJ Stroud, and I think he's such a good example because as a rookie, came on, they win the division, they have all this momentum, but then he really faltered as a second year player, and now he's trying to kind of get back to that elite quarterback status or as one of the best in the league. How can Tyler avoid that second year slump? And what are reasonable expectations for him, maybe from a national point of view, for the 2026 season?
I think some of CJ's issue was inconsistency in the offense on the offense. Remember that this is now their second coordinator since he's been there. And so I think
Hmm.
there was some of that drop off, but also when you're getting sacked 53 times, it's a little hard to be a great guy at the line of scrimmage. And so uh, I think sometimes when we talk about these players, we really have to take in the context of what was going on around them. But I think Tyler Shook, if you just look at the momentum that he had last year heading into the season, the way he got better week in and week out, I think that tells you like all you need from him is consistency, because the consistency for him was that he was trending upwards. The more games they put him in, the way that he played well enough that they said, this is our guy. He's our bona fide starter. This is not going to be a quarterback competition. And I think the addition of Zach Wilson in there is really great for him, because I've heard Zach has just been such a team player. And obviously, he's had his fair share of licks in this league and can talk about all of the challenges that come with it and the media, you name it. And so I think they've really built a smart quarterback room too to help Tyler Shough have some success.
It seems like Spencer Rattler has taken a step forward this year too. He looks more confident. He looks really good out there at training camp. So I think that in general, they are going to push each other to get to be the best that they can be this season, regardless of who is playing or not. When you went to camp and you visited, what is something that you heard that surprised you about this team?
Something that has surprised me about this team. I don't know. I feel like the Saints, they're just the fact they've had Mickey Loomis and Jeff Ireland in the front office and their approach to things, it is it's been very consistent. And
Mm-hmm.
then you get a coaching staff like Kellen Moore and Nuss and those guys, like they're not going to create drama in the media. They're going to say as little as possible.
Yeah.
Um, their focus is squarely on the football, nothing else. Kellen's gotten, I think maybe what shocked me is that Kellen's gotten a little bit more comfortable with the media and in his
Mm-hmm.
own skin as the head coach. I mean, keep
Hmm.
in mind, like I've covered him since, he came out of the league and was on this roster. We've been doing this together 11 years. And so I think that would probably be my only surprise, was just seeing how comfortable he's beginning to feel the way that he runs his practices.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the team is beginning, it's hard when you have a head coach like Sean Payton and their legacy. It's hard to step out of those shadows and
Yeah.
create your own. And there was a lot of questions about Kellen Moore because, like, is he the rah guy? I mean, he is such a change of pace coach when you think about it. But I think maybe that's what shocked me the most, is seeing his personality and the buy-in from the players. Because when he first got hired, a couple of guys would say to me, like, I mean, this guy's like my age. Like, who is this guy? Like, what is, who, and he just doesn't have this, like, he doesn't have the brashness of a Sean McVay or, Mike McDonald. Mike McDonald is quiet, but he's a little bit more brash. Schottenheimer in his first coaching job, he's not afraid to say we're going to the Super Bowl. But Kellen, I always wondered how he's going to handle the podium and the media. And what I do appreciate about New Orleans is you guys embrace everybody. You sort of make them feel like family. And so I think he and his family are beginning to feel that.
Yeah.
Well said. It's interesting with Kellen because he's young. I believe he's the youngest head coach in the league, but he's really not. Like, he's been a coordinator calling so many different kinds of offenses. He's had success with so many different types of quarterbacks. So for a young guy, he is really seasoned. That being said, taking the conversation back to the players, Jane, this is talking season. Guys are optimistic. Players, coaches, they're always going to talk up certain players and try to give them confidence, right? But with Kool-Aid McKinstry, there seems to be a
Mm.
genuine praise from coaches, from players. We had Justin Reed on his program a couple weeks ago, and kind of unprompted, he talked about how good Kool-Aid McKinstry has looked. He seems to be a very important player for the Saints this year as their number one corner. What have you gathered from your reporting for expectations for him this season? And do you think Kool-Aid can be that number one cornerback for the Saints this season like they need him to be?
I think the most important thing is he wants to be, right? And he talked about in the offseason and the challenge that was posed to him about, you know, how he can take this team to the next level and the need to, like, Staley is really impressed upon him in order to be a shutdown corner. Your endurance and your ability to run has to be up here. And so he talked about really drilling down that into the game. And a lot of people have asked kind of like how that rotation's gonna work. And God, if I had my notes, I wrote it down. But I think they said safety's gonna at Justin Reed at safety is going to play a little bit deeper. They've got Kool-Aid McKinstry and God, who's the other one? This is my third
Quincy
training camp.
Riley on the other side.
Yeah,
Yes,
Quincy
Quincy
Riley.
Riley. So they're feeling good. They feel good about those guys. It's just you're so used to hearing some of the bigger names that I think there's a lot of just question marks about this defense of what are we going to get from these guys.
Mm.
But I think it also helps. You've got a guy like Cam Jordan, who I realize the numbers have not been what they've been over the years. But I mean, guys, he's been in the league 16 years, which is crazy. I think it's important to have him as a voice on that side of the defense to really help those guys with the small details of their game and how to approach the job. And, I was really wondered when you lost to Mario Davis and Tyron Matthew, what that defensive side of the ball is going to look like. But I think it's been really encouraging to talk to people about Kool-Aid McKinstry that he can that he has an ownership of that and a belief in wanting to elevate that side of the ball as a leader, even if it is just year two.
They do have a young cornerback room. They didn't make a lot of changes on the defensive side of the ball. A lot of the focus was on offense in the offseason. And it seems like, in speaking to Justin Reed, as Mario alluded to, they kind of have a little chip on their shoulder about that. Like, okay, you guys are invested all on the offensive side. Well, we're going to show you that we still got it. We're going to continue to perform, and we're going to be better than the offense this year. And so it's kind of a fun little rivalry between the sides, even though they're working towards the same goal, of course. Um, you mentioned Demario Davis and Caden Ellis getting added in as
Mm.
a linebacker from the Atlanta Falcons. Don't talk about them a lot on this program, especially not in a kind way. But he does seem like he's come in and been a completely different leader for this team. It's funny talking to Danny Stutzman yesterday. He said he was afraid to call anything on the field when Demario was there because he didn't want to be wrong.
Mm.
But Caden said that he feels like the IQ of the defense is so high, and he's been really impressed by that with who they have on the team and not making a lot of changes, knowing Brandon Staley and what he's been able to do defensively. Where do you think the Saints are going to fall in what they're able to do this year on that side of the ball?
Look, I think there's such a pride on that side of the ball, in just sort of the deep history of what defense has done in New Orleans. And so I think keeping the Cam Jordans there, that's huge to help them continue that standard. But I also think no different than the offense. Year two with Brandon Staley, I think is going to be big for this team. And
Yeah.
even the way that he's talked to Cam Jordan, like and sort of helping Jordan's game as he's gotten older and helping him sustain his career and the passion that he has. I even asked Kellen Moore, because a lot of these head coaches, they'll spend time in the defensive rooms. And I said, how much time do you spend over there? Or is your comfortability and familiarity with Brandon kind of keep you out there? He's like, I've got immense respect for him. And let him do his thing. And I think that's a good thing, right? Like,
Mhm.
trust your people, delegate, focus on the task at hand, which at least in New Orleans is getting that offense up to speed. And so I do think year two for both of these is going to be interesting to watch. It's just they're not braggadocious. These guys aren't going around telling you what they're going to do or making these bloated promises. And because they lay low, it's sort of hard to see what you're going to get from these guys.
Excellent vocabulary. Braggadocious. The NFC South has
Braggadocious.
not been, the division has not been very braggadocious recently. A lot of people say that, four fan bases in four different cities think that they have a shot at this thing. And looking at the odds from our friends at FanDuel, right now the Panthers are at plus 330, or the most recent odds, I should say. See the Panthers at plus 330 to win the NFC South, the Falcons at plus 310, the Saints at plus 240, and Tampa Bay at plus 200, 2 to 1 pretty much. And I think it's interesting, Jane, because the only word I can think of to describe all the training camps for all these teams is tragic. Like, it's not very good vibes with all these teams between, all the drama in Tampa Bay with Vita Vea and Baker Mayfield. We saw a season-ending injury already down here to Brian Bresee, who was a starting defensive tackle. Carolina had two guys go down in Chris Purcell and Nick Scourton. And Jalen Walker, unfortunately, the latest victim in Atlanta, looks like he's going to miss the season. That being said, how do you think this division is shaping up? Like, there's so many unanswered questions. There's not really a lot of continuity among the four teams. How do you see the NFC South shaping up this season?
So I love the NFC South is it's always somebody's division for the taking. I swear
Yeah.
every single year, and it always comes down to the end. But I do think that there's something to be said about the way that this Saints team has just quietly handled their. I mean, the fact that Alvin Kamara didn't even become a distraction, it that could have been. This is a guy that is beloved in that city that had an off year, but history shows you that he's meaningful to this roster. And the fact that they went out and they got Travis Etienne and Alvin showed up to OTAs for the first time in his career. And so I it tells you that at least internally things are healthy. But I wouldn't ever discredit Baker Mayfield,
Mm.
especially a Baker Mayfield that feels disrespected,
A little pissed off.
undervalued. I went to Texas. He went to OU. That is the only OU player that I found myself ever cheering for. It's just I don't know if I want to face an angry chip on your shoulder Baker Mayfield in the division. So that to me is the big question mark.
That's fair. I know a lot of people are big on Baker just doing Baker Mayfield things and making it happen out there. And we just wanted to say that we appreciate you joining us on this podcast, especially talking to us ahead of time, giving us some advice, because that's definitely going the extra step. And it's feels good for us to have that time with somebody that's at your place in your career. So if you are looking to hire a great candidate, you can also go the extra step and tell why they are interested in that job. So these candidates can go to ZipRecruiter. You can try it for free on ziprecruiter.com/audio. Give your pitch as to why you are a great candidate. ZipRecruiter has a powerful matching technology and is the #1 rated hiring site. You can try ZipRecruiter, meet great candidates who will go the extra step for your job. 4 out of 5 employees who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. You can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/audio. That's ziprecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter meets your match on ZipRecruiter. So if you are in the market for a new job, go to ZipRecruiter. Now, it is Hall of Fame weekend, and I got to ask you about Drew Brees because I know you spent a lot of time covering the Saints. What are some of your memories of Drew? And just, it's going to be a great weekend for all of Saints Nation. So I just got to give you the floor to talk about
Yeah,
Drew for a second.
I think the story about Drew, I mean, if you remember, it was like after Hurricane Katrina and that city was suffering. New Orleans, of all the places that I go, has such a unique culture, vibe. I even joked with Kellen Moore when I was there. I was like, "Do you feel zestier now that you've been in New Orleans?" Because he can sometimes feel like a vanilla wafer cracker, so to speak. But there's just something to that city. And Drew Brees, by all accounts, is very vanilla wafer cracker. There's not much seasoning there. But the way he leaned into that community, the way that he was embraced, brought them, a Super Bowl. And the way that his family grew up and the fact that Gail Benson is the godmother of his children. It's fascinating, and I swear, if he wanted to come back to New Orleans and run for mayor or governor, that would be a landslide. But I think the one thing that stands out, even hearing him pass it down to the next generation with Tyler Shough, was always his pregame preparation. Dak does the Dak dance. That started with Drew Brees. It was loosening up the hips and loosening up the torso. And he was so consistent about all of those things. And so I think it's the way that Drew went about his business as a quarterback is something that coaches across the league will always put up on their board and say, this is the gold standard for quarterback. This is how we want somebody to lead. For me, covering him, my lasting memory will be I hated the fact that he didn't come back the year after COVID or retire the year before COVID. As you guys remember, the Tom Brady to New Orleans thing, that was real.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That was a possibility. But out of respect for Drew, they wanted to see if he was going to go to the broadcasting booth or not. And of course he didn't, and he came back, and then COVID happened. And to see, I think there was 5,000 people that were allowed in the dome, and it was that final game between Drew Brees, Tom Brady, and then after Tom Brady beats him in front of a crowd of 5,000, he's over there. Brady is playing catch with his kids, and Brady was like one of their like favorite quarterbacks. And it made me so sad that I'm glad that he is getting this Hall of Fame
Mm-hmm.
induction, and I'm glad that, as he said, like this is going to be their goodbye love letter to New Orleans, because I didn't feel like him and Brittany got that from that game. I mean,
Yeah.
that will be my singular memory of Drew Brees. It was so odd. I have pictures from it, and I just felt like of all the things that Drew brought to the city, for this to be the final game that we see him, and the fans didn't get to see it in a larger capacity.
Mm-hmm.
That's sad to me.
Yeah, well said. And it's really exciting for me too, because his last two seasons with the Saints were my first two seasons doing the play-by-play in Spanish. And in those two seasons, he took a loss to Kirk Cousins in the playoffs, which is very rare. He's only won
Mm.
one. And then he had to play in the COVID dome for the last stretch of his career. So that was really sad. But it'll be nice to see him go in, and it'll be nice to see the city of New Orleans get some love. You have the rare people that hate on our city. Bill Simmons, I'm looking at you. You can go fly a kite. But most people love coming down here. And I saw one of your tweets that I really liked about getting stuck in the airport in New Orleans for about six
Ah,
hours. And you said you really just enjoy the people watching and, seeing the natives kind of go about their lives in New Orleans. So that being said, in your career, your long, illustrious career, how would you describe your experience whenever you're visiting our city?
it's all love. I mean, when you come to New Orleans, you can get in a cab and or get an Uber or go to the airport, and the woman behind the Smoothie King or the Cafe Du Monde counter, they can literally give you the 90-man roster. And
Mm-hmm.
for them it's no different than Texas high school football. If you go to, and I used to, when I started my career, it was in Tyler, Texas. So we'd go to the Gilmers of the world and the Lindales and the White Houses, and the way that they embrace their football team is the way that this entire city of New Orleans embraces that team. And so I love it down there. I'll never forget my very first time in New Orleans. This was pre September 11th. And I went down there to be a wedding date. And it's the only time I was told I couldn't get on a plane, because you could drink at the airport, and people may or may not remember this. You could literally walk up with a hurricane to the gate. And I just remember, I mean, I was like so young. I was probably like early 20s. And she literally told me I couldn't get on the plane. And so that was my first memory of the New Orleans airport. And then there's been a couple times where the old airport was so miserable that if you showed up at like 9 o'clock, everything had shut down. I remember just begging for a cup of gumbo because I hadn't eaten yet. And it was like the bottom of the barrel. But now when you go there, I mean, shout out to all of the, like the Sazerac bar, which I spent about
Mm-hmm.
8 hours in the other day at the
So
airport.
fun.
And
Yeah.
everybody that's coming in, it's literally like Vegas. Like everybody is hung over. If there's a flight delay, it's just like you feel like you're stuck in the pits of hell because you've got this hangover. But yet, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna hair of the dog it? Are you gonna go get another drink? It's just so acceptable around there. I mean, I swear kids start drinking when they're 14 because there's there is a parade or a festival every weekend. I was down there last weekend and I said, why is everyone wearing white? And they're like, it's the white linen party. And then this weekend is the dirty linen party. And then you've got
Yep.
a bunch of men walking around
Red
and
dress.
red off
Yep.
the shoulder type dresses, So it's just, it is literally a place of fantasy, excitement. And even when their Saints are struggling, and there have been the fair share from, Bounty Gate to losing that game on the no call against the Rams, the team shows up every single year. They are the loudest stadium that I've ever been to, and the costumes are
Mhm.
tier one type stuff. So it's a special place to live.
It is. It has been very special for me being here over the past 5 years or so. Just the culture, the vibes, everyone's always in a good mood. I love that. You cannot stay in a bad mood here in New Orleans.
No.
With this weekend coming up, there's going to be so much coverage for the Hall of Fame and the start of preseason. Where can we see you, and what are you doing next?
To be determined. We have
Hmm.
new bosses at ESPN NFL Network. So I have no clue where I am past this week. I've got home renovations. So I will likely be watching the game as I'm putting my house back together after 2 weeks on the road. I am staying at a friend's house currently. So uh, yeah, it's been fun. But we'll see where I end up. I'll definitely see you guys for Saints Cowboys. Uh, they're playing in the preseason, and then we'll see if I get to see you guys at joint practice. And if I do, I hope you guys say hello.
Yeah, of course.
Don't forget to go see our friends at Katie's Restaurant in Mid-City at 3701 Iberville. Chef Scotty and the gang always putting out the best food. If you're hungry, that's the place to be. One of the most New Orleans restaurants around, in my opinion. And even if you want to just watch some football, now's the time to get out to Katie's. At the time of this recording, the NFL Hall of Fame game is tonight between the Panthers and the Cardinals. So get out to watch that. Get out to watch the college football in the upcoming weeks. Get out to watch the NFL football in upcoming weeks, including the New Orleans Saints. Whether you want some fresh seafood, some steak, some pizza, very underrated at Katie's, get out there to 3701 Iberville Street. Go see our good friend Scott Craig and Katie's, proud partner of Believe in Saints. And don't forget, thank you for listening as well. Don't forget to hit subscribe. You can leave a 5-star rating, write a review. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. For Erin Summers and Jane Slater, I'm Mario Jerez saying thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to y'all real soon. Who dat?